So I think Bob Lynn and crew are here tonight, Chris and Becky with them to provide a similar experience, update on where we're at transportation. I know several of the board members, I think all the board members, like myself, received this year, and the 3 years I've been here at the start of school year, lots of questions and concerns relative to transportation. So I thought this was a good time for the board to kind of see where we were, where we are, and what does that mean for the community and for families. So I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you. And again, kind of like Scott, you kind of stole my intro, but all right, we'll go with that. Madam President and members of the board, I have been asked to give you kind of an update tonight on transportation and some of the changes we've seen in the reductions over the last 3 years. Tonight we'll take a look at the state guidelines, so what we are mandated to do by the state. We're going to take a look at where we were at before the reductions, and then what reductions did take place in fiscal year 13, and then where we are today. So the first slide. Is it like my phone?
It's up here. Point it at the projector here.
Hey, Chris.
There you go.
That's it. I'm not really good with technology. So
You're very good in the musical, though.
Yes.
So
Thank you. I'm not prepared for that tonight, though. So the state guidelines for transportation is a half-a-mile walk to a bus stop, so a student can walk up to a half a mile to their bus stop. There's a 2-mile non-transport boundary that a student can live within 2 miles of the school and still be, in the non-transport area, and also we are required to transport grades K through 8. In fiscal year 12, so this was actually prior to the reductions, what we did at transportation is we had a 1/4 mile of a walk to the bus stop. For our elementary students, they walked 1 mile to 1.3 miles. I'm sorry, the non-transport was 1 to 1.3 miles. The middle school was 1.5 to 1.7 miles non-transport, and the high schools were up to 2 miles. Transportation was provided for grades K through 10 and grades 11 through 12 on a space available basis. After the reductions were made, we went through, we met with multiple people in the community, all the schools. We invited parents to come in, and what we developed from that was what we call the safety matrix. And the safety matrix kind of took multiple things into consideration. It took into road classifications, speed limits on a road, the traffic during the time of when students would be coming to and from school. So we put together the safety matrix that we could look at, and we could put it over the non-transport barrier and see, okay, what would be the safest way for a student to get to school. These were the reductions that we ended up making in fiscal year 13. We started off the year with a half-a-mile bus stop. We did up to 2 miles non-transport. Grades K through 10, they were assigned. This is actually, both of those are saying the same thing. So transportation was provided for grades K through 10 and grades 11 and 12. And then on space, when there was space available, that's when we transport juniors and seniors. But I did want to say that we have never turned away a junior or a senior who wanted transportation. We have always made space for them or found a bus to get them on. So I'm going to give you 3 scenarios of kind of the range of changes. We're going to look at 3 elementary schools and kind of how they were impacted. This was probably the largest impact. What you see here in the black area is the non-transport area for Mark Twain. This is where it was at before the reductions. We went through, and you'll see here that this was the 2 miles. Now, keep in mind, this really isn't 2 miles because most of our schools' attendance boundaries don't really go 2 miles out from the school. They overlap. So right here, Mark Twain will overlap with Robert Frost and McVeigh. So it's not really a 2 miles, but this is what it would look like using the 2-mile non-transport boundary. This next one is what we ended up adopting for the current non-transport area. So with this non-transport areas, this was using the safety matrix that we put together, looking at the classifications of roads. Adding this non-transport area to Mark Twain put another 146 students in the non-transport area. The next school we're going to look at, this is kind of what we would consider an average impact for a school. This is Charrington. This is where my kids go. Charrington, this is the non-transport boundary, which my kids didn't have transportation. Even before that, we lived too close. But this was where it was before the reductions. This is where it would be with the full 2 miles. So you can see it goes all the way out to State Street, and then the King Arthur area, which is kind of behind Kroger. So students obviously would be crossing either Schrock Road or Westerville Road, or if not both. So obviously it didn't make it into the safety matrix. So this is what Charrington ended up looking like. We just added those students into it. And again, Charrington with their 2 miles, they kind of overlap with Whittier and Point View, so it's still not a true 2 mile out. And then again, using the safety matrix, this is one that had no impact. We did have a couple schools who were like that. This is Huber Ridge. This is what it looked like before. And when this is with the 2 miles, I mean, this is students, going up Cooper Road, Cooper Colony by the Vineyard Church area. I mean, obviously, none of those areas made it into that. So with the safety matrix in place, Huber Ridge stayed exactly where it was at. So in summary, this is the student impact. The first line you'll see would be, if we went to the full 2 miles, looking at the non-transport boundaries. The first column is 3,396 kids would have been added to the non-transport areas if we were to do the full 2 miles with every school. After we used the safety matrix, we put that into place. We looked at the feedback from the community. Also, as a transportation team, we kind of went through it, and we even made some adjustments on our part and what we felt comfortable with, just knowing how routes ran. With those reductions, it was over half the students we were able to they were able to continue with transportation, so 1,629 students. I'm going to hand it off at this point to Becky, and she's going to wrap it up.
So where we ended in 15-16, we restored back to quarter miles, and that's where we're at today. So students walk up to a quarter mile to the bus stops. We still stayed within 2 miles non-transport boundaries. So if we're looking at restoring back to where we were in 2012 and restoring transportation to that 1,600 students that Chris talked about, we're talking about adding 12 bus routes, which is approximately $696,000, which includes driver costs, maintenance, fuel, items like that includes in that figure. And with that, we'd have to purchase additional 4 buses, which we're talking about $360,000. So the first year to restore back to the non-transport boundaries of the 2012, we're estimating around $1,056,000. And that would be just the first year. So any questions that we can answer for you?
Just a reminder, it was, last year we went from the half mile to the quarter mile
That's
wall.
correct. Last year was the first year, and then we're still at that position today.
Much of an impact on, other than you guys adding stops, did much of an impact on operations or costs?
It was approximately $50,000 for the year, but with the recommendation of transportation to take stops off of places like Westerville Road, Sunbury Road, the board approved our recommendation to take those stops back into the neighborhood.
So that added some safety to it? Is that-
Absolutely.
Okay.
Huge safety.
The only other piece I'd say is there's a linkage back to the previous one and pay to participate, because the transportation costs for athletics that were in Scott's that are not in here.
Did you say that isn't included?
I don't know, this,
No, this is
No.
completely
Right.
separate
Yeah.
from the activities or the athletic. This is separate. This is busing kids to and to school and back home.
Rocco?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I say this every time I get a chance to talk about our transportation department. Nationally recognized, nationally awarded. You guys know what you're doing. And I put full faith and trust in you guys. I think that what we hear as community feedback continuously is that we have tons and tons of exceptions and outliers still because of overlaps and issues where we continue to have problems with single points, single students, And while it might be easy to minimize that and say, well, one elementary school child's got to walk a little bit further, the truth of the matter is we run into safety issues, we run into all different kinds of problems. As opposed to the discussion around pay to play, I'm a little bit more aggressive on this topic. This has a direct impact in a positive way to students regardless of their economic status, regardless of their personal situation, regardless of their family situation. It impacts all students in a positive way that are currently not being transported today in school readiness, early day preparedness, in reducing overall transportation times. I think that this is something that the community has been very vocal on, with no exceptions in my time on the board. So I think that this is something that we should strongly consider as a board, and quickly.
I agree. It's something that never stops. You know, the noise never stops around the issue. That tells us that we have a very real, very deep, continuing to impact family issues. So when I look at what we're talking about, and I think about the kids in the dark, and I think about the kids in the cold, and then I think about the massive traffic backups around our buildings that occurred after we implemented our current transportation strategy, I think of the safety issues related to that. I think of the drains on families as regards time and energy and focus. I think of the impact on children getting to school, needing to be there, the impact that decent, reliable transportation has on all families at all levels. We have to address the transportation issue. As far as I'm concerned, there were a lot of complaints before this particular version went into effect. I can remember years ago people saying, how could we do that to the 11th and 12th graders? That's a safety issue because we're asking our youngest drivers to be out on the street and pick up their buds, and here we go. So we have a lot of overlapping, intertwined issues between this and the prior report. This one, though, seems to me to be the clearest cut. We need to address this issue. Just as I said before, we were doing what we had to do when we made those cuts. Now what we need to do, what we have to do, is restore a safe environment within this community.
I have a question regarding the first year total. Maybe you haven't projected 2 years, 2, 3, 4 down the road. Will they be the same each year, additional? Is that what you're projecting?
Number of students that we're transporting?
No, the dollar figure.
It's less
Oh, okay. The addition of 6 buses will continue on. I
Yeah,
mean, it'll be
that
6.
part, of
Yeah,
course.
that'll, but the,
But the 600 and some, yeah.
will
that
continue
will-
on from year to year, because that's 12 buses that we have to put back on the road.
Right.
Correct.
When you analyze the transportation budgets over time, in FY11 and FY12, we totaled somewhere over $8 million both those years. The 2 years prior to 2011, 9 and 10, we were somewhere down around a $7.5 million. And in the years since 2012, we've hovered again down around 7.2, 7.3 million. There's the 3 major factors, and this is kind of what I think you're going to, Dr. French, is the ongoing costs, which includes payroll, et cetera. That's been a place where we've been on the low side from previous years because of the impact of contract negotiations, particularly as it relates to healthcare and some other things, and fewer drivers. So that's what can be impacted. The other place to look at is the purchase service side. And this is a piece we want to explore. Much of that purchase service pertains to students with IEPs who need some kind of individualized transportation. And some of the questions we're asking ourselves is how much of that is created because a student, in order to go to their school of placement, has to travel so much time that the nature of their disability then affects their ability to ride the bus, so we bypass that and say, rather than 45 minutes and 2 buses, we'll just transport you through a purchase service. So as you mentioned, small athletic teams, so the concept of vans, that might be ours rather than purchase service to reduce costs, might be a possibility to help us on both sides of this equation. So the other part of this is the charter and private school piece. So, we've had questions about us transporting students to charter and private schools and not our own kids. And I'm not beating up on anyone. I'm just stating a fact that what the law requires is that we have to transport them to their private or charter school or offer them payment in lieu. Annually, you do the, forgot what the term is.
Payment in lieu of contract.
And
That's correct.
it's because they are, it's like,
We don't provide a yellow bus, so we pay the
there's
parents.
a term for it, though, something
Yeah, it's-
impractical to
Oh,
transport.
yeah.
It's got to have a fancy legal
Yes,
term to
there
it, I'm
you
sorry.
go.
So we go through that piece
I heard you.
as well. So we, I have it in my own neighborhood. I drive by it every day as I watch our kids walking. So, yeah, the cost containment side of this goes the operations side, the ongoing operations, and that's part of contract. So we can plug those in. If you said it's going to take X number more drivers, you can plug that into the 5-year forecast and see it project out over time. You can see the benefits project out over time, assuming contracts as they are. So at least up to 3 years. The one that we need to take a close look at is the purchase service side. And that one I've seen fluctuate as high as 1.7 million and as low as 1.2 million over those years that I've been looking at. And so we're talking about what are the variables that are impacting that? Because that's a place where if we get more efficient, we may be able to capture some of that back. So those are the three big numbers inside of the transportations.
This additional buses. It's not-
Not a lot to add, probably spoken too much already. I don't know why, from my perspective, we wouldn't look pretty seriously at this. These are not kids that signed up for band or football or whatever. These are kids that we love and value, and if it creates a safer situation, and we have done the good due diligence of austerity in the past to be able to be in the place where we are now, made hard decisions then, this might be the benefit of us being here now making an easier decision and saying that this is a valuable tool to make a difference in children's lives across the district.
I've got a couple of quick questions. If we decided to go back to fiscal year 12 or somewhere in between where we are now and fiscal year 12, how much time would we need to implement that new service?
I'm so thankful you asked that question. We currently do not have the bus drivers to fill these routes, so it's going to take us a while to recruit, to train. They have to be certified, they have to be CDL drivers. We don't have that staffing right now. So we're thinking the beginning of next year, if we hit the roads hard.
Next
to try to get-
academic year or next calendar year?
The beginning of like August of next year,
Okay.
when we start school again.
There's also the issue of buying buses, correct?
Yes, we
Yes.
definitely would need some extra buses, so
Okay.
we'd need to purchase those 4 buses. So,
And Bart, correct me if I get this wrong, but bus purchase is a capital purchase. Doesn't have to come out of the operation side. It could be part of,
You can take it out anywhere you want. I mean, technically, if the
That's right.
district has a permanent improvement, our history shows we've taken out a PI in the past.
Yeah, we have.
So, but that's not a requirement that it has to. I'm just telling you,
Well, we can.
you can take it wherever you choose. It traditionally comes out of permanent improvement.
The other question is also a timing question. You've heard us saying we want to see some proposals. We want to see some information on pay to participate, and it sounds like we want to see some information on what we'd be doing around transportation. When do you think that you would want to or would be able to come back to us with proposals?
I think the other critical point of discussion is the 5-year forecast that comes up in early October, and where do we stand. But just kind of Bart and I joke that I like to play treasure in training, so sometimes I go into his field and I look at him and say, just throw some at me if I'm gone too far. But the 5-year forecast that you saw in May had projected revenues from the state at an increase of 1.5% per year. You got 7.5% per year. So you didn't get 3% over the next 2 years, you got 15% over the next 2 years. So there's additional revenue coming into the district from that portion, as well as whatever else we've done. So I think you're going to see a 5-year forecast that even with changes you've made to technology and textbooks and capital improvement, and those changes, and the Point View project, and some of the other things you've done, you're going to see a 5-year forecast that looks better than it did in May. And so it creates the opportunity to look at these. So the short answer is, if the board would like, we can bring something back as soon as the next meeting for you to take a look at, not act on, ask more questions, and then see the 5-year forecast, and then have some decision parameters.
That sounds good to me. I would like to see something regarding the number of students. I don't know where, number of students, and they've already figured this out, apparently. There's 12 buses additional.
12 routes,
12
4
routes.
buses.
Well, all right, 12 routes. Well, that's 12 people. Okay.
Yeah, if you don't,
12 drivers,
Could be one
I'm
driver.
assuming.
Could be, well,
Would that be? Yeah.
Bob's got some.
yeah,
Probably.
I'll try to help. Just a couple things. We definitely have spent a lot of time on this, and I did hear about the previous report wanting multiple variables and options, which I completely understand. In this case, I would have to disagree completely, and here's why. The changes that we made with the matrix and bring it to where we are, the things you have to take into consideration: neighborhoods, apartment complexes, road divisions. Be glad to spend a lot of time on that with each of you to explain that. But it really is an all or nothing. There's really no in between. You bring it back part way, we're going to have an intersection that's not going to make sense, and then you're going to have one neighbor to the next neighbor, and they're not going to understand. It's not going to be a fair approach, in my opinion. I feel very strongly about that. Be glad to bring it. I'm not saying no. I'd be glad to do that. But it really should be an all or nothing.
So you're saying that the buses that we have currently cannot overlap or pick up some extra students?
No, not only that, and I know, I see your smile. Be glad to explain that as well.
Yeah,
But the
I
answer
will.
to that is no. The boundaries themselves, if you just do quick math with the 629 kids, divide it by about 50. That's how many you can get on a bus at a time. So do that one. And then the timing. We've had some discussions in regards to some emails going around about how long a student might be on a bus. If you want to look at those options, I guess maybe we could look at that if we want to expand how long a child can ride on a bus. But if you look at our fixed times, kind of hard to do that when high school gets out at 10 after 2, and we got to have that bus be done leaving that school, dropping off, and be out of middle school by 2:40. There's not a lot of time to go do that in your personal car, let alone a school bus with 50 kids on it. So it is extremely tight. They know better than I do, but I've lived it as well. You're talking minutes to get these kids to and from, and to be on school on time so that they're academically prepared. We don't want to push the envelope any farther on that, because I think we would start failing. You'd be getting complaints from the community stating that their kids aren't hitting their first instructional time because we've crammed too much. We're already right there. So just be sensitive to that. We'll definitely put a lot of options together if that's what you would prefer, but I think we're going to zero in back to what we've presented tonight.
So I want to provide some supporting commentary for what you've just said, because, look, what I can tell you is that based upon the GPS enablement and all of the systems that we have in the transportation department, this is, I think a lot of people have a mistaken impression of transportation, right? That it's just a bunch of bus drivers, right? In truth, this is one of the most evidence-driven, data-driven organizations in the school system, and driven in a way where the data that they have is very specific, very precise. It's down to feet, it's down to seconds. We can go over and we can see any given bus at any given time, anywhere it's located. So I know that the data is there that supports what needs to be done. I guess what we'd ask for in the form of proposal would be more precise figures, more dimensions around timing, because I have a question back to you, Bart, that the 7.5 in the first biennial actually hits in the 2016 fiscal school year, correct? July 1 of 2016?
yeah, it's July 1 of 2015.
That'd be
So
15.
it's
Not this
15,
year.
16.
Not for the approved biennial, it's next year, right?
you think about the next 5-year forecast, that
Yeah.
would be, 16, 17.
Okay, good, good. I just want to make sure that, I mean, all the numbers are lining up. I mean, let's just get this down to a refined proposal. I don't see a real need to have multiple proposals around this space.
I really appreciate the blunt assessment. Thank you for
I'm
not saying,
sorry.
oh, yeah,
That
we can
came out a
bring
little
you 4 or
aggressive.
5, and thinking this just doesn't work. It wastes a lot of people's time. So I appreciate that blunt assessment. So we've got the 5-year forecast coming up. We're going to be talking about that. We know that we had increased revenue. So what we're going to be looking at with this 5-year forecast, in addition to looking at the change we already made, you know, the magnets, the building usage, the technology, the additional staff, the department facilitators, point view, all of those components that we have put back into the piece of the puzzle. We also need to look at adjustments to capital improvement budget. We need to look at transportation, adjustments to transportation, and we need to look at what we want to do with pay to participate. All of that needs to be looked at in the context of the entirety of the 5-year forecast. So, you know, Carol, you were saying bring back some proposals for the next meeting, as we were talking about how soon to do that. It would be helpful to, particularly when we look at pay to participate, which has much more leeway in how we look at how that is designed. It will be helpful to have those proposals sooner rather than later, so that when we get to the 5-year forecast, we're not messing around with a lot of unknowns. So I would really like for us to take all those pieces into account so that we can add those in as we look at the list of things that we have done thus far.
I agree. The other piece of that 5-year forecast that Bart and I talk about a lot is projecting out to, we know about the renewal. We know that at the end of 17, the emergency levy expires, and there's a conversation the board was going to engage in around the when and the nature of that renewal. The other one is, okay, 2012 was new money in the form of the emergency levy. When's the next new money? And that's a function of when expenditures and revenues start to cross. So in the May forecast, I think that was 18 or 19. We need to see what that looks like in the new forecast, because that's when you start. And then what is the health of your carryover budget at that time too? Because that's the sustainability issue that Dr. French is getting to. Is that okay? If it was first new money was 2012, renewal in 17. Where does it project to seem to be the next new money? Is that 8 years from the last time, 10 years from the last time, 9 years from the last time? And then how big might that have to be because of some of these decisions that are being made to add better services to kids?
Those are all the things I have in the back of my mind as I'm talking, you know, because I'm thinking of the taxpayer in terms of what they're, you know, wanting us to present to them or not wanting us to bring, and when and how soon and that type of thing. So I think the key is to listen to where Bart is with the 5-year forecast the next time, in October, whenever it is, yeah. So
The other thing we know about that is that the current funding formula that the state's done has a cap. So Westerville is qualified for more money, but because of the cap hasn't gotten full
Right.
funded. And I don't like to ever project what the legislators are talking about, but I think that's one of the issues they're starting to try and deal with. One is the guarantee, the minimum that they've been paying districts, and the other one is the cap. And how does that affect?
yeah, and the other thing is we don't know where we are with the renewal at this point. So that's
Absolutely.
another unknown.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's entirely appropriate to keep all of that in our mind's eye. I think about the taxpayers. I am one,
We all are.
and I am not the least bit interested. Excuse me. I'm not the least bit interested in going where we should not be going. But I am very interested, and I got to tell you, this is what Nancy was saying a few seconds ago. I appreciate you standing up there and shooting straight with us and not dancing around the issue.
Absolutely.
And just when I was, I almost used the word indoctrinated. When I was led through the transportation department and just saw the tremendous work that you all do, I mean, it was an eye opener for me. And if there's anything that I would zero in on, it would be let's get a laser focus on the updated forecast to just the best of our ability, and then make some strong decisions, keeping our true north on what is best for the students and the staff and the community of Westerville City School District.
I'm not going to repeat everything. So thank you very much.